Welcome everyone to the information session for the Missoula Project for Nonprofit Excellence. My name is Meredith Prince and I'm the Executive Director of the Missoula Community Foundation. And we've been running this program. This will be our sixth grant cycle. And we're very happy to be able to provide this opportunity to local nonprofits. Rachel.
I'm Rachel Guin. I am the grant coordinator, and so I work with the kind of nonprofits as they move through the process. I work with Meredith and then the funders, and basically it. Oh, and the consultants that we hire to do the actual assessment. Oh, right.
Jesse.
I'm Jesse Jager. I am the development director at the Poverello Center, but I've been involved with this process as a consultant, staff person in an organization, and a board member in an organization. So I kind of hit all the layers. And I guess I'm talking about Grantee Perspective later on, right?
Right, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Great, now you can go sit down.
Awesome.
Thanks. So first I'm going to do an agenda review, which I had it numbered correctly, but when transferring it from one computer to the next, it did this little renumbering thing. So we've got our welcome and intros, which is what we're doing right now. We'll give an overview of the program, also an overview of the program and process. We'll talk about eligibility criteria. We'll review the capacity assessment self-survey, yes, form, which is what you would be completing to start applying for the program. We'll talk about readiness. What does it look like for an organization to be ready to participate? We will hear from Jesse as a grantee perspective, and we'll go through the timeline, and then we'll give you some information on how to apply the program and process. So on the most basic level, it's a two-step approach to capacity building, which is comprised of, number one, an assessment award. So we connect you with a nonprofit consultant, a local consultant, somebody like Rachel or a colleague of her, to come into the organization and really assess what's going on and to come up with some ideas for a capacity building project that would really help elevate your organization to the next level of effectiveness. And then number one also is project award. So no, it's actually number two. After the assessment award is the project award. And using the recommendations that come from your report that is prepared by the consultant, you will select a capacity building project. A lot of times it's a strategic plan. It might be a communications plan, a rebranding. We've seen feasibility studies, so those kinds of things. Fundraising, did I say fundraising? And oh gosh, I don't know. Oh yeah, all right, we don't have to go through the whole detail. Go for it, house metaphor. Well, maybe I'll just do more detail. Yeah. All right, sorry. More detail. So just to give you a little bit of context, this program came out of a statewide effort. It started in 2008 with a program or a organization called the Big Sky Institute for the Advancement of Nonprofits out of Helena, and they got together some Montana, statewide funders to start this approach. This is, I'd say pretty pioneering approach to capacity building. There's not, I think, a lot of other programs that are like this in the country probably. And they ran the program for 3 cycles, and I think worked with 17 organizations, including a few local organizations. And at the end of it, they decided that it would be maybe better served as a locally based program. And so we, Missoula, were the pilot for that. And so we have basically taken on the statewide effort. We have catered it to the local community here. And as I mentioned, we've been running it for 5 years. And the idea is that other communities will possibly adopt programs that are similar to this. And currently Billings has started a program that is very similar. And we're talking with a local foundation that's interested in expanding capacity building even more. So it is just really important we have organizations like yourselves that are doing really critical work, and we want you all to be as strong as you can be so that you can be as good as you can at the work that you're doing. And the donations that donors make to your organizations are even better spent because you're just in tip-top form. And so we talked about the 2-step approach. One thing I want to point out is that if you are awarded an assessment award, we'll pick 3 organizations to win that, then you would be eligible for the project award. If you are not selected for an assessment award, you wouldn't be. And the organizations that get the assessment award, we really want you to get the project award. Even though you do have to apply for it, we work with you to make sure that your project is just right and that it will be successful. That's what we really want, is for your project to be successful. So we've got the different steps. We are currently in the pre-application step. And so the first thing that you will do is to complete the Capacity Building Assessment Self-Survey, or CAS. And the reason that we have this is to identify any potential barriers to success for your organization. We want to select organizations that are really able to benefit from this process. So we want to pick the organizations that are really ripe for this. And so the questionnaire is to be completed by your board chair and the executive director, or whoever your most senior staff person is. And the reason that we have 2 people do it is to identify differences in perspective. So, the staff person might think one thing and the board chair might think a different thing, and that is instructive. So we want to know that. Then the surveys are reviewed by the MP&E grants coordinator, that's Rachel, and she will evaluate the nonprofit's readiness to participate in the program, and she may follow up by either email or phone to ask some questions, to talk to you, to tease it out, if you're ready to apply. And then based on that, we will invite you to an online application form. So you've got the pre-application, and then you've got an application, which is a little bit longer. And then step 3 is selection. So the governance committee will review the applications and will formulate questions for the grantees. And then after that, Rachel will set up interviews with each of the organizations, and again, to determine readiness, to get some answers to the questions that come up, for the governance committee. And then once that happens, the governance committee will reconvene and will select the top 3 and that will win the award, win the grant. Then we have phase 2, which is the assessment award, and that is a professionally facilitated comprehensive organizational assessment involving the board of directors and key staff leadership. And the idea is to build consensus among board and staff as to what should be done in the project grant. And so, the first really important thing to do is to assemble your leadership team. And that consists of board and staff members, senior board and senior staff members, and should have between 4 and 7 members with as much of an equal balance between board and staff as possible. I know that a lot of organizations don't have a lot of staff, so you may have far more board members than you have staff. So that's what you would have to do. And then the leadership team really works with the consultant to plan the process and coordinate the process. And then after that, we will have an orientation. So this is a mandatory orientation where your board chair and executive director would come, and we also have the consultants there, and we will have in advance paired you up with the consultant, and so you get to meet your consultant and get to get some dates on the calendar so you can start working together. And then you will take an online survey, which has been developed by Rachel, actually. We used to use a national survey that we had to pay each time we took it, and we decided we'd be better served if we created our own survey tool. And it identifies organizational strengths and opportunities for improvement in different aspects of internal operations, financial management, fundraising, human resources, organizational planning. And this is really part of the organizational assessment, the survey is, but the consultant will review an array of background materials, including strategic plan, annual plan, communications plan, fundraising plan, things like that, and work with the leadership team to create a report that will contain key findings, including top 3 recommendations of projects that you can take on, and also other recommendations that you can use. So it's very useful. And then after that, after the assessment is done, you will evaluate your experience with it, and so that we can learn and make the program better. So we've done a lot of tweaking, adding orientation sessions and things just to make it a more functional process for the nonprofits and the consultants. Then we have phase 3, which is the project grant award. Again, we have an orientation. We want you to be really prepared to submit this application and have a minimum of back and forth between us after you've already submitted the application. And so your project will be based on one of those top 3 recommendations from your report, or if not, there should be a good reason why not. And so we will cover completing the project grant award application, recruiting and selecting a consultant, because at this point you will select your own consultant. In the first part, we select the consultant for you. In the second part, you get to select and contract with your consultant, but that can be a process in and of itself, and we want to make sure that you have a really great, a tight scope of work that has all the activities and deliverables delineated so that the project is, at the end of it, it is what you expected it to be. Then you apply after this orientation, and it is for a grant of up to $5,000 to complete the project. And most of that money is towards a consultant to help you. You can spend up to 15% on non-consultant costs, but really it's to help it, just hire a consultant. Then of course we have implementation of the project, and then after it's done, you'll evaluate it, and that is it. All right, now we're ready for the house metaphor.
So one way to explain and understand the process that the assessment award is about, because it seems to be not always so clear and straightforward. If you're gonna buy a house, or if you have a house and you're getting it appraised, somebody comes in and does an inspection, right? And so an inspector will come in and will look at your roof, look at your foundation, look at the heating, look at the walls, and basically let you know what is happening with your house. Is it structurally sound? Is the heating good? And they don't actually, so say they find out that you need a new roof, they don't then in the process say, oh, here, I'm gonna, kind of redo your roof for you, or here, I'm going to fix your foundation for you. So our assessment consultants that come in are really doing that kind of overall assessment and giving you kind of an overview of the health of your organization. And then the report gives you recommendations, just like in an inspector that inspects a house, then gives you recommendations of the things that need to be fixed in your house so that it could be good for resale, or so that you could tighten up the things in your house. So that's a really important thing to understand about the assessment award. When we come in, it's a natural inclination, since the consultants also do know how to go in and fix the different parts of your organization, it's a natural inclination to request from us, well, can't you just show us what a good fundraising plan is, or can't you just tell us where we need our strategic plan to be tightened, or how do I do board governance, or what does this mean? That's really not our role in the first part. The second part, the project award, is then when you get the plumber to come and fix the leaky pipes, or the roofer to come and redo your roof. That's when we help you up with a consultant that does the actual project that will firm up your organizational infrastructure. So just to understand those two. And so that's important to understand when you're applying for the grant, this process as well. We're really looking at everything. So you may think, oh, we really just need a strategic plan. Okay, in your heart, the board's heart, everybody's heart is set on, like, we're applying because we need a strategic plan. Well, we're not necessarily going to say, yes, you need a strategic plan, and that's what we're going to look for. We're looking at the whole entire picture. You might need a strategic plan, but we may see, actually, you really need some board leadership training and governance training before you even do a strategic plan. Your board is really not as tight and firm and as educated or committed as we would like to see before you enter into that process. Or it might be that, yep, you might need a strategic plan, but you really lack diversity of funding. You only have grant funding. And there's a whole another array of ways to get funding. And you don't have a fundraising plan. Your fundraising plan is an Excel spreadsheet. Or you don't actually have a donor database. It's whatever comes through QuickBooks. And so we're gonna come in and say, well, actually, you really need a donor database and a good, strong strategic fundraising plan. Then you can work on your strategic plan, or, but we give you choices. We'll give you recommendations, and sometimes they're listed in priority of order that we think you should do it. Other times, it'll be like A, B, and C, and you choose. There's a lot of recommendations that we give that you can already start to do yourself. We'll write up a report and say, you don't have any job descriptions. Well, you don't necessarily need a consultant to do job descriptions. You can start to work on many of our recommendations, and a lot of times that's what organizations do, and they find that to be one of the great values, is that we give you an array of recommendations, from things you can do on your own to things that are really good for this second component of a project award.
Thank you. That house thing, well, we just had an inspection on our house. Anyway, it really rings true, and it is true, and I think it's a really great way to explain it, because it's important to manage expectations around what happens in this part of the process and what happens in the other part. All right, now we're going to talk about eligibility criteria. So, and you might have picked this up on the way in. So you must have had existence for at least 3 years with your own 501c3 tax exempt status, or you could be a fiscally sponsored organization. And if that is the case, then your parent organization just needs to complete just a little form. It's not a big deal. During the pre-application process, just to indicate that they are supportive of you going through this, because we are fiscal sponsors for organizations, and that's just something that you would have to do as a courtesy to the organization, just so that your sponsor knows what's going on. We want you to maintain a primary office within Missoula County and provide a majority of services to people within Missoula County. We're the Missoula Community Foundation. Our service area is Missoula County, and so we really want to focus our efforts as much on Missoula County as possible. We want you to demonstrate a track record of providing services that are needed by the community. Makes a lot of sense, right? We want to have an impact with this grant. We want to make our community better. So you have to demonstrate how you're really doing that. And we want you to either have adopted or be willing to adopt LGBTQ inclusive non-discrimination policies in employment, volunteer, and board recruitment, and in providing services. And if you don't have one of those, we have some sample language for you that we are happy to provide. And we have preference will be given to organizations with annual expenditures of less than $1 million. Now that doesn't preclude organizations that have a larger budget from applying, but we just feel that the amount of money that, this grant is worth $10,000 for organizations that have larger budgets. It's maybe less impactful. But again, we have given the grant to organizations that do have larger budgets, so if you have a larger budget, still please apply. We want to have seen that you have participated in the last 12 months in some other capacity building activities, including one or more of the following. So you may be a member of a state or professional association that addresses issues of governance, leadership, and management. So we've got the Montana Nonprofit Association, they're fantastic, they just had their conference. The Missoula Nonprofit Network, the Western Montana Fundraisers Association, they actually have an event tomorrow, I believe. Nope, Friday. I keep thinking it's Thursday. It's not, Friday. Or a professional association that's related to the work of your organization. We want to see maybe you participated in a conference, workshop, or other learning opportunity that address issues of organizational development. You also may have worked with a consultant to address an issue related to your organizational development needs. So that just shows us that you are really committed to capacity building. So you're doing these kind of less involved steps, and then what this is a larger undertaking. And even if you haven't undertaken any of these activities, we still we look at this on a case-by-case basis, so you're not disqualified if you haven't done any of those things. All right, we're ready for the CAS, and I will bring that up. So this is our website, and this is where if you want to see more information, I mean, this is really, we're telling you all of it, but it's here also. And then if you want to complete the CAS, then you just scroll down to where it says to apply, and then you just click on this link, and the link's going to come up. And Rachel's going to run through it.
Great. So the CAS application is the first step in applying for this, and it's the process that we use for looking at whether or not your organization is ready to apply. And when we talk about organizational readiness, what we're really looking at is your organization in a place or space to be able to take advantage of this program. It's not a classic grant where you just get the money from us and then you go off and do the program. We're your partner in this, and we're walking through this process, and we really want to make sure that you understand what it is this is about, and also that your board and staff are aware of what this is about. So readiness in an organization really is about, is your board solid? Have there been many changes and transitions that have gone on? Do you have some funding that has been lost? And so, click this one?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see. Yeah. Wait.
I haven't, it's probably because it's on this computer. Create an account. Well,
Do you know what your login is? To log into
no. See, there's always something that you don't, like I had my computer, but then I didn't have the right adapter, and so then I just moved it over to this computer, but then I'm not signed into, I don't know. Anyway, so you will have to create an account on Submittable to complete this application. That's something that you didn't know, but it's really easy to create an account.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Okay. Wow, I remembered my password, you guys.
Good
Just
job.
That's huge.
That's excellent.
Just thought I should bring that up.
When you were doing that, I was like, let's see if this works.
Yeah.
Exactly, me
If
too.
it was me, no way.
So, okay, so we have some basic organizational information, so we know who's filling this out. So I'm just gonna skip over all of this and make you dizzy. We ask for the date that you attained your 501c3, or if you are a fiscally sponsored, then you would put that in. And then in your own words, explain what this process is about. And the reason that we ask for it in your own words is we really want to know that you understand this. We've had organizations apply who just think that they're getting money to go off and do a program. So we're not looking for you to cut and paste off of our website. So it doesn't have to be perfect. None of this is about perfection. It's just really about us having a conversation in a sense. Tell us why you want to participate in this process. Where's your organization at? And what do you expect to get out of this program? What kind of clarity, clarification, anything like that? Have you applied before? If there are organizations that have applied up to 4 times, and we encourage groups to keep applying, and sometimes they don't receive it because maybe they weren't quite ready, or maybe there were other groups that had applied before and were more ready. It can be a competitive pool, and so we just want to know if you have. It's never held against you, and as I said, even if you haven't applied before, because we have had groups get it that it was the first time they applied. As I said, we're looking at organizational stability. We question whether certain things have changed. Sometimes board and staff are not getting along, sometimes there's board turnover, or maybe board and staff are getting along, but there's conflict over a huge issue. Do you move location of your building? Do you, take your organization who's underneath another organization and develop your own new nonprofit? mean, there's a lot of reasons that board and staff can have discord, and they don't always have to be negative. They can really be a sign of growth and change, but we want to know about it. It's important for us to know for a variety of reasons. One, it means all our consultants have different expertise, and so we would match you with a specific consultant who has expertise in the area that you're having challenges in. If major revenue sources are ending, or change of a board chair, change in executive director, we have had experience where people do not report this, they get offered the grant, and then once we get in there within the first 1 or 2 meetings, we realize they're actually not ready. There's so much turmoil, or there's a really huge issue, and we have rescinded the grant. And then we have follow-up, runner-up groups that we talk about in the funder meeting. So it is best to be honest, because that's a painful process for everyone in all reality. So if you say that there is something going on, just tell us what it is. You know, how many executive directors have you had? Have there been organizational difficulties at times in the past that have led to an ED turnover? Tell us why. Then asking about your board. How engaged is your board? This is really critical. We see this as a board and staff process together. Your board really runs your organization. They are the quote-unquote owners of your organization, even though they're volunteer. And so a nonprofit's board really needs to know what's happening. We want to know how engaged they are, how active they are, especially since we require throughout this process for them to be active. So we're looking to understand that. We're looking at capacity. Have you had prior experience working with consultants? That's important for us to know so that we know what kind of education we need to give you if you get granted the award. And also, you know, just education about how to work with a consultant. We're kind of on the outside looking in. Asking about, can the board and staff leadership, you know, can they spend time and manage this? The amount of time varies per person. So a staff member, maybe they're just attending one meeting and filling out the online survey, so that could be as little as 3 hours, to someone on the leadership team, which could be 6 to 8 hours because they're coming to more meetings. And then the executive director can spend anywhere between 15 and 20 hours. And it really depends on how many, like, organizational, you know, how organized your files are. Because we come in and we say, you know, we want to see this list of documents, we want to see the past 2-year board minutes, we want to see your bylaws, we want to see job descriptions, we want to see your fundraising materials, and we ask for all this information. And so it's not, it's okay if it's not nice and tidy on your computer, because you should see my desktop on my computer. But I'm just saying that there are some groups who just have that all in a file and just zip it up to Google Drive and give us access. And then there's others who have to gather it, and that takes time. So that's where that time variation of 15 to 20 hours happens. And then sometimes the consultant really needs to ask a lot of questions, and so they'll spend more time with the executive director to really get a full picture. Because that's our goal, is to really fully understand so that we can make good recommendations. So that's also where it can be more time. And so what we're asking is can you do this? You know, if you have a board that is overburdened, which happens quite often in Missoula, and that's okay, because that's why we have such a great town, because we have all these people volunteering. And we still want to know that so we can figure out the best process, and that helps the consultant figure out the best process to design for you. We asked you about your funding resources. Has it been stable? We asked whether or not you anticipate any major funding changes. If you're federally funded, this past couple of years has been really challenging for organizations that get large federal grants, because they have been stopping them or taking them away or changing the way they're giving out new grants, and then there's delays of when they actually give them the money. I don't believe that any of your organizations fit into that category, but that has been a challenge. And so we'd like to know about that, because there have been some organizations who really have almost gone under due to that shift.
it could be that you have a huge grant, like maybe one donor who gives you $300,000, you know, over 3 years, $100,000 per year, and you know that's going to be sunsetting and not really happening anymore. So that's a smaller version than a federal grant being taken away. You know, you still have operating income, but this has been a really large chunk, and it was great to get your organization up and going. So there's that possibility. Then we ask about your mission, programs, and planning. And then we ask for you to actually proofread your application, which is kind of important. The deadline for the application is October 22nd. This is a rolling deadline. The sooner you get this done, I'll review it, and then I will see if I have any questions about your readiness to apply. I can say, like, you know, actually, I don't see that you are ready, or you don't meet the eligibility requirements. And if you don't, then that's good, because then you know, okay, I can go search for funding somewhere else or build on these things. And I'll give you reasons why I don't think that you're ready. And that's a little bit of a mini assessment right there that you can go and look at. But if you do get it done sooner, then that gives you more time to fill out the grant application, because once I determine that you are ready, then I will send you the link to the actual project assessment application. So you don't have to wait till the 22nd to get that done.
Great, that's all. Thank you. Okay, you already talked about readiness. Now we're ready for the Grantee Perspective. Jesse, come on down.
Meredith sent me some questions to ponder beforehand, so I have them on my phone.
We can also interview you.
That's okay. I got it. So as I said, I've connected with this in 3 different layers. One is a consultant for the second stage. I did the strategic plan for MUD, Missoula Urban Demonstration Project, when they were in the project. But I won't talk very much about that. I'm going to focus on, I was on staff with Empower Montana when they went through the process, and on the board with Home Resource when they went through the process. And so with Empower Montana, what was going on for us is we had this weird tax ID status as a local chapter of a national organization called the National Coalition Building Institute. Our name was NCBI Missoula, and nobody knew what that meant. And this weird tax status we had was causing us troubles with grants, and we felt that it was time to become our own completely independent nonprofit and have a new name that actually made sense. And so that's, we were in that process thinking about it when this application came up, when this process came up for us. And I don't know if we thought that was the thing that we were gonna end up focusing on as part of this, but you know, we knew that like getting some capacity building for the organization was important. So we applied and you know, went through the assessment process and did that work. And what I find is that assessment piece, that first step, is such an amazing piece of data that you get, that you just really can't get anywhere else in the nonprofits. Nobody's giving grants like this. And that assessment, you would never be able to afford to go hire Rachel to come in and do that kind of work to really look at your organization by yourself. So we would never devote resources to that. But having those resources come in and that like helped us identify, oh yeah, wait a second, like this thing that we need to do, we can do it, right? And it laid out some recommendations related to that. It also laid out a whole bunch of other capacity issues that we had as an organization that we thought about, like, well, okay, we need to do something about that too. And I'll talk about more about what we did with that later on. But the project that we did, the second phase, was rebranding the organization, so funding for that, and some work around the legal process of transitioning from this chapter to this of a big organization to our own independent thing. And those were really important capacity steps for the organization. As for Home Resource, again, you know, the big, I think, adaptive challenge for that organization at the time, as I was seeing it as a board member, is that, you know, we did not do fundraising. Like, in fact, there was active resistance in the board about doing any kind of fundraising at all, right? We have the store, that's generating income, that's fine, that should be it. We shouldn't be doing anything else. But of course, that just funded the store, and there's all these other programs that we wanted to do as an organization. And it was a pretty, don't be scared by saying things like, is there discord in your board? We were having a healthy conversation about fundraising as an organization. And so we went through the assessment process, and the two things that came out of that were work around board development, right? Particularly training and assessment for getting ready to do fundraising. And the reason we really need to get ready to do fundraising is we're getting ready for a capital campaign, right? You can't go from no fundraising to capital campaign. It's impossible to do. And so they really, the project that got funded for that was a bunch of training and board development work that helped us prepare ourselves to be successful in starting to do fundraising and then start this capital campaign that we're moving into now. Questions? So, in terms of what was most valuable, that assessment piece, getting getting the grant to go on and do the project part, the very defined project piece you do second, was really awesome. I actually felt that the other recommendations we got were as important as even the key ones that we got there. For Power Montana, it identified a whole bunch of staff capacity we needed to develop, and that helped us actually take that to another funder and say, hey, funder, you've been with us for a while. We've just gone through this process that's really identified for us, and we could really use your support in funding this staff capacity. And they did that, and they gave us a grant that we're able to carry out and get that capacity built. Wasn't MP&E that funded that, it was another funder and they were able to say, oh wow, look at this great report you got. This makes total sense to us. Yes, we're on board, right? With the project grant, I would say what was valuable about it was we were able to pick out what was scaled to the appropriate thing. So you're gonna get about a $5,000, what is still is a $5,000 grant. Yeah. And this would go more to the valuable and hardest thing is when you're looking for that project that's coming out, the projects out of it, is be very clear about realistic about what that $5,000 can do, right? You're not gonna hire a new staff person for $5,000, right? If you're coming in thinking, oh yeah, we're gonna get the seed money to start someone for staffing, this is not gonna work for this, right? But things that I think are doable are, getting yourself a good fundraising plan together, or doing a marketing plan and getting a new website designed, or legal counsel about something, those sorts of things. Training and development for your board. Those are going to be scalable, but that doesn't mean that other parts of what you get recommended in that assessment aren't helpful, because you take that to any funder, particularly ones that are, that well, say, hey, we really need help with this. You've got the logic of why you need to do that, and it's been independently sourced, so it's got a lot of credibility. And I had one more thing about valuable, is that I found that it really helped get the board engaged. Boards are funny things, and I say this as a board member. Board members are busy, their lives are going all over the place, they're doing a million things. Sometimes they're on staff of another nonprofit, all that kind of stuff's going on. And the process is an intentional way to really engage them in an accessible way. So, they're taking the time to fill out assessments. There's a logical process. They kind of understand where they're going, and it's a good way to bring board members to the table and really do that deep think about the organization. That can be hard to do if it's just the ED or a staff person saying, hey, we need to talk about this. You've actually got a framework to walk them through, which makes it easier for the board to be engaged with that conversation. So there's that.
What do you wish you knew?
What did I wish I knew? It feels like this has been, you've done a lot better. The time frame, I was in this, both organizations I was in was like in the year 1 or 2 or 3. Yeah. And so there was a little hiccupiness in terms of like, what's the time frame of all the process and when things happen and that kind of stuff. So pay attention to the time frame. This is not your standard grant, as I said before, where you get the money and it's just like until a year later when you write a report to them, or 6 months or whatever. Like, there's check-in points all the way through the process, and make sure you understand those and you're on top of that. And then I guess the other thing is just being really scaling your project, making sure you're real clear that your project matches the funding that's available there, or if there's you can access some other funding to help do something bigger. But that you want to make sure that those two match. I think that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse.
No, but I would I found it really valuable at all 3 levels that I was involved with it. I think it's a well thought out process. No one's doing capacity building really in anywhere in a lot of ways. And so having that space to be able to actually think deeply about your organization is I think profoundly powerful for an organization, and has helped. I'm actually at Poverello was I think year 1, right?
Yeah, it was.
And so I'm seeing 5 years later or 4 years later, like where that took the organization in terms of the work it's done now, and I can see the residues of kind of the thinking and stuff in the organization even that long past. So
It's great to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse. Yeah, I just think it's super valuable to hear from someone that's gone through the program and as Jesse has had so much experience with it, so it's fantastic. Next, Jesse just set me up perfectly because I'm going to talk about the timeline. So we talked about all the steps, but now here's actually the timeline attached to it. So here we are. This is a 2018 through 2020 timeline. So this is not a short process. It's long, but so here we are in October. The week of October 8th is our nonprofit information session. Here you are. Congratulations. Monday, October 2nd, 22nd. The pre-application survey is due by 11:59. And then Rachel, as she explained, will be reviewing those surveys and getting back to you on a rolling basis. Don't need to say any more about that, really. Then, Thursday, November 15th, we have the assessment award applications are due by midnight. 11:59, sorry. And then, well, tentatively on Monday, November 19th, but sometime around there, the governance committee will meet and review the applications and then formulate the questions for the applicants. And then roughly November 20th through December 8th, that's when the interviews will happen with each individual organization. And then the week of December 10th is when the grantees will be selected by the governance committee. We'll reconvene and make those top 3 selections. And then the week of December 17th is when we will notify all applicants of their status. Flipping her over. Then we are into 2019. So 2018 is all about selection. 2019 is really when the assessment starts. So the week of January 28th, we will have a mandatory awardee and consultant orientation and signing of the grant agreement. So when it gets a little bit closer, we'll send out a poll and we'll try to make it a time that works for everyone because everyone has to be there. And then February 1st through May 1st is the time when the assessments are actually conducted. That's when you will be working with your assigned consultant. And Rachel will be checking in with you periodically just to make sure everything is going as you've expected. If you have any issues with the consultant that you're working with or just any issues with the process, we want to make sure that we get those resolved. Then Friday, June 7th is when your assessment consultant will have a draft report to Rachel, and then Rachel will look through it, punch it up a little bit if it needs it, and then the date for the final report due to the grants coordinator and grantee is Friday, June 28th. And then the week of July 8th, we will have a project grant orientation session, which is also mandatory, but we'll arrange that with you. And then from July 8th through August 31st is the project grant award application period. So you have all of that time to work on your project grant application. And then in early September, the governance committee will meet and review your applications and hopefully approve them. We may suggest or strongly suggest modifications to your application. Then after you've got approval, then mid-September we award, we do the grant agreement with you. And then mid-September to early October is when the contract approval happens. So first you get your application approved. We're like, yeah, this is the project, it's a strategic plan or whatever it is. And then you will then solicit a consultant. And incidentally, it could be the one that you worked with at the first part of the project. If you really liked them and thought that they jived with your organization, then you can certainly continue on, but no obligation to do so, and nor should your consultant try to push themselves on you. And we try to select consultants that won't do that, but if you have any issues with that, just let us know. And so we will work with you on that scope of work. We might go back and forth with you a couple times just to clarify and make sure that that's really tight so you have a successful project. And then early to mid-October is when the project grants get underway. And so it's a $5,000 award for the project grant. You get half up front. Once we've approved your scope of work, then we send you a check for $2,500. And then on the other end, when you complete the project, then we will send you the other $2,500. So now we're into 2020, and hopefully by March 31st, you will be able to have your project grants completed. At that time, as I mentioned, we will send you the other $2,500. And then we just have, some evaluation, some reporting that we want you to do, both just kind of 6 months and then, what is that, 45 days and 6 months, something like that. So we check in with you a couple of times just to see how everything's going. So that's your timeline. Then, how to apply. We're here, we're at the end. So you can go to the website, which I pointed out at the beginning, and you can click on that little plus sign, and then it opens it up, and then you can see all the information, read more information about the program if you need to. Hopefully this will have covered everything. Of course, you can ask questions of me if you have any. And then have an executive staff, hopefully the executive director and a board member, follow the link to complete the CAS survey. And just briefly, I just thought it would be useful for you to know how we evaluate your applications. So we talked a lot about readiness, but so we have the 3 evaluative criteria that we look at, and this is the application part of it. So first is impact. So what is the impact of your nonprofit's work on the Missoula community? Is it a direct influence? How broad is the reach of the organization in terms of benefits to the community? So we have a 1 to 5 scoring scale, and we'll score you on the basis of that. And then also readiness. Is the nonprofit poised and ready to conduct capacity building work? Are there internal factors that make this a ripe time to assess capacity, which could be leadership transition? Just because you're having a leadership transition doesn't mean you shouldn't go through this process. Sometimes that's the best time to go through the process. But we need to make sure that there is enough capacity to assess capacity, because you need to keep your organization running at the same time. So do you have enough staff and board members? We don't require you to have any certain number of staff, but if you have more than 1, that's helpful. It may not be 2 full-time staff, maybe it's 2 part-time staff, but just having more than 1, someone to kind of mind the store, as it were, is advisable. Then we have urgency. So this is more of an external look. Is the timing right for an organizational assessment based on the external environment in which the nonprofit works? Is there urgency in the community regarding this organization's contributions for the short and long term? This could be the local community. It also could be looking at kind of what's going on in the country at the time. So that's it. Do we have any questions? It's a lot of information, a lot to take in. Any parting comments?
Are all the consultants based here in Missoula?
Yes,
Okay.
very good question. Yeah, it is really a locally based program. We want to support local consultants like Rachel, and there's great talent here, so we do that for the assessment, for the project part. When you get to select your consultant, you can select a consultant from anywhere, because there may be certain expertise that you can't get here in Missoula. For example, the Roxy went through the program. They were one of our first organizations. And look at them now, they're doing great.
I know, it's great.
That Redeco project that they did was as a result of their strategic plan, which is what they created when they went through the program. So we feel pretty proud about that. But when they did their project, they brought in a consultant from Portland, one of the art, I think it's like the Hollywood, I don't know. The art theater in Portland came over and did some consulting. That made perfect sense. So you don't have to use a local consultant in the project grant if you don't want, if another consultant would serve you better. Other questions?
This is sort of off the wall, but is Mary Stranahan, is this part of her?
They
Does
are
she have a hand in it?
funders, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, which I didn't mention is who our funders are. We've got Martha Newell is one of our governance committee members, Julie Osborne, Kate Murgadick, and Annie Schaub-Watson. Those are the people that will be making the decisions as to who gets the grant. And then we have the Dennis and Phyllis Washington Foundation, the High Stakes Foundation, and the Stranahan Foundation that are providing supplemental support. So they're not involved in the decision making or anything, but they're providing funding, which obviously we need. So, and the Missoula Community Foundation does provide some funding also.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everyone, and if you have any questions, just
Thank you.
let me know. Feel free to reach out, and good luck.